would like to officially welcome all of you joining us today. My name is Susan McPherson, and I am an author acquisitions editor here at David C. Cook. For those of you who don't know us here at David C. Cook, we are a nonprofit publisher with a heart for ministry and for bringing Christ-centered resources to the church here in the U.S. and all around the world. And we're really thrilled to kick off this new monthly webinar series that we hope will give you a peek behind the scenes into the heart of some of our most beloved books. And today's featured book approaches one of the most debated issues of our time. Are you pro-life? Are you pro-choice? It has certainly become a polarizing topic in our culture for sure. Today's guests have written an incredible book that focuses on the complexity of challenges faced by women with unplanned pregnancies and really gives us practical ways we can support them to make life-giving choices in all circumstances. I have the joy and honor of introducing you to the two authors of this powerful message of love, hope, and healing in their book, this beautiful book titled Unplanned Grace, a compassionate conversation on life and choice. It's so good to see you guys. Thank you so much for being here to do this webinar with us, Natasha and Brittany.
Thank you for having us.
Great. Oh, I love it. And Natasha Smith and Brittany Smith, and you're not related from what I understand, correct?
Nope.
Work with Save the Storks, a nonprofit ministry that exists to inspire cultural change by empowering strategic partners like pregnancy resource centers and churches to serve and value every life. They believe that to end abortion, people must be educated on its realities and equipped to respond with compassion and love. I loved the tagline I found on your website. It said, Save the Storks, uniquely pro-life, empowering women with real choice. So I'd like to just start really quickly by giving you a little bit of information about both Natasha and Brittany. Natasha Smith is the church resource manager at Save the Storks. She hails from a small town in northern Michigan. I'm originally from Ohio, so we're kind of neighbors there, and now lives in Colorado Springs, where she supports pro-life organizations by telling stories through writing, video, and photography. She has an academic background in communications and biblical theology focused on the Old Testament, which I find very interesting. And her love for the pro-life movement is grounded in the understanding that all life has value because every life is created in the image of God, as told to us in the first chapter of Genesis, of course. And Natasha's co-author, Brittany Smith, has worked as a journalist and a content strategist in digital marketing. She is originally from North Carolina and currently lives in Colorado Springs, working on staff as PR and content manager for Save the Storks, where her passion is telling stories that show how the pro-life movement really cares about women, that women are stronger than our culture wants them to believe, and that it's always possible to change our story. Those are impressive resumes, girls. So thank you so much for being here. Natasha, I wanted to start with you and just ask you to share with us how you got started with Save the Storks and what is your role there?
Yeah, well, I got started through kind of a random set of circumstances, but I heard about Storks back in 2014 when I was on staff with Summit Ministries, which was supporting the work of Save the Storks. And so I kind of tracked with them for a few years. And then in 2017, the Lord opened the door for me to come and work with them. But first, I actually volunteered with them and was able to drive one of our mobile medical units to Troy, New York, and deliver a bus to a pregnancy center.
Wow.
And that was really the first introduction I'd had to the extent of pro-life work. And it really, blew my mind with just how holistic it is and how I was in New England states. And so just how real and how stark the differences between pro-life and pro-choice, and how those pro-lifers were just so resilient, so strong, so compassionate. And they've been kind of a consistent memory for me in all of the work that I've done since.
That's excellent. Excellent. Brittany, how about you? Share your story about what brought you to Save the Storks.
Yeah, so funny enough, Summit Ministries also kind of connected me to Storks as well. My dad was a speaker a couple summers at their location in Colorado Springs, and he got a free Save the Storks shirt when he was there. And I saw him wearing it when he came home, and I was like, what is this ministry? Like, what are they about? And he was telling me about how they had a non-political approach to the pro-life movement, and they were really working with pregnancy centers. And I just thought it was such a unique and different approach to pro-life that I had ever heard. And so I followed them for a couple years, and then when a writing job opened up, I kind of jumped on it and went through the interview process, and then ended up moving out to Colorado Springs.
Excellent. I love what you said. It's a non-political approach. So when reading the book, I just want to share with you a little bit about what stood out to me. And that was one of the things that really stood out to me in the book, as well as what you do in your ministry. Other things that stuck out, just eye-opening in so many ways, how many women and men are affected by decisions when it comes to an unplanned pregnancy. So many compelling stories that really shed light on the difficulty that these women face when they're facing this choice, the lack of knowledge, judgment that affects their decision, judgment they feel in the church pews. And I just felt that it's such a unifying message that no matter where you fall on the issue, we can all agree that we care about lives. And I love that about this book. So being involved in Save the Storks and ministry, tell me a little bit more about how you guys came about to write this book.
Yeah, so through my work, starting back in 2017, I was visiting pregnancy centers quite often. And then I also had the joy of being the point person for all stories and stats of mobile unit work throughout the country. All of those who are affiliated with Storks would send us a story a month. And so I started compiling and seeing themes emerge, like, those who say that they didn't really feel like they had a choice, and then those who felt scared and alone. And I just thought that that was so interesting in contrast to what culture says about this issue as being empowered, when so many women really felt like there was no choice. And so that kind of started the process of thinking of trying to get these stories out. And then after New York passed their laws of late-term abortion, I was doing a lot of work with filming, and we went to Albuquerque, New Mexico, which has never changed its laws in restricting late-term abortion. And so standing outside of a late-term abortion clinic and just seeing that and hearing about that was so devastating and so hard. And I went home and I was praying for a few weeks and just saying, like, Lord, what do I do with this? This is so heavy and so dark. And I just felt like he encouraged me to expose the darkness. And I started thinking of, like, well, how do we do that? And I think the way that we expose the darkness is by being bright lights, and the church is called to be that. So that really, I think, is the force behind this book, of trying to encourage the church to just be a stronger witness for life, because in so doing, we can expose that darkness. And so we got that ball rolling, and then Brittany joined our team, and she just added so much to the work of really, rooting all of these issues and stats and the expression of what pro-lifers are doing that meet the needs of women all across this country in really creative ways.
Excellent. Brittany, talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, well, it was funny because I joined the staff about 2 years ago, and I think a couple months in, they were like, hey, you're gonna be on this book project. And so I was like, hey,
really?
I guess we're doing this.
I did not know that.
Yeah, so but it ended up being such a great fit, because Natasha really had all of these stories of women that she had been meeting with, and then I have a journalism background, and so I love doing research, I love digging into topics. So I think kind of both of our strengths fit super well together in writing this book, because she was able to pick out, common themes in these stories and say, you know what, a lot of women choose abortion because of financial and economic reasons. All right, then I could go and dig into all the stats of like, what are the top reasons women choose it? What are the organizations that are meeting those needs? And then we were able to sort of draw people in with a story, back it up with the facts, and then at the end of each chapter, give a call to action to the church along with a prayer to get people involved on these particular issues.
Right, right. You do this so effectively. That's what I love about this book, because you do bring these stories to life and all these really different circumstances, and they touch on all the different things in the conversation with pro-life, pro-choice, and I just think that's fabulous. So, Brittany, if you don't mind, just tell me a little bit about what is pro-life? What does it mean to be pro-life?
Yeah, well, and I think in light of kind of how Save the Storks approaches it, that has really shaped my pro-life ethic. And I really believe being pro-life is being pro-woman. We have to take care of women on this issue. They're facing so many pressures. They're facing so much from the culture saying you can't do this. Like your only choice is abortion. And I think as a pro-life people, we have to support women and surround them and show them that these are the resources. And luckily, I think that the pro-life movement is doing that. The pro-life movement is, especially with the work of pregnancy resource centers, which by the end of this, you guys are going to think I'm a broken record, but I just believe so much in the work that pregnancy centers are doing, because they're every single day. I mean, we've met with 5 this past week, 5 or 6 centers, and they're meeting with women every single day who are coming into their centers, and they're scared and they feel alone, and they're able to surround them with hope and with resources. And so I just think that that is such a tangible expression of what it means to be pro-life.
Absolutely. Natasha, talk a little bit more about these pregnancy resource centers. I'm just amazed at how they are the hands and feet of Jesus to these women. And the pro-life movement gets this kind of stigma attached to it, that they're judgmental and they're shaming women. It could not be further from the truth. So can you talk a little bit about that, Natasha?
Oh, that's so true. Yes,
So
these
true.
pregnancy centers are amazing. Every time I meet an executive director or anyone who works there, honestly, I just think, man, like these are giants of faith, because they're working so hard. And it's such a difficult job that they are doing, of just engaging in stories that are hard and messy and complicated, and loving women through that no matter what she decides. And so pregnancy centers offer absolutely free care for women. They'll include free ultrasounds, pregnancy tests. They'll do even STI testing and treatment, which is a great way to connect with people before they're pregnant and build that network, so that if anyone does find out that they're pregnant unexpectedly, they can come to the center and be cared for well. And so these centers will then have social workers and licensed counselors and just so much to ensure that they can help that woman get anything that she needs to be able to sustain her life and the life of the child. And then the centers also have typically up to 2 years of after birth care for that mom, the father, and the child, to ensure that there's parenting classes, there's material resources, so they really are never left alone after the fact.
Oh, I was amazed. I had no idea. When I look at this as a resource to share with others, I really want to encourage you all listening today. I have people in my life who are pro-choice and very adamant about it. I would have no problem saying, hey, here's Unplanned Grace. I would love for you to just read, because it also doesn't attack the pro-choice people. And it's a very loving approach to those in that camp as well. So bravo to you all. Brittany, what was the hardest part about writing this book?
That's a good question. I think just early on, figuring out, because we had so many amazing stories, and then there's so much research for each one that we could dig into, and also we just found out that there's so many organizations that also are tackling these issues. So just trying to narrow down, like, how are we going to narrow down the book. How are we going to sort of narrow down the
That's always hard.
issues? Yeah. And then, how do we start weaving together the stories with the research and then adding in sort of the call to action to the church? So I think, it was a good problem to have because we had too much information almost. But I think through that process, it was really great because we did find out our strengths. And then, like I mentioned before, being able to sort of weave those together ended up being great. And I think like made the book a lot stronger as far as bringing together all these different types of resources. But in the beginning, I think that was the hardest part of just trying to figure out how do we shape this? How do we kind of narrow things down?
Right. So Natasha, what was your favorite part about writing this book? What was the easiest part?
Oh man, that's also a very hard question.
That's a hard question.
I think, the most exciting part of writing this book, I think, is like you were mentioning earlier, finding this middle ground that really could help start a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
That's what gets me so excited because I've met with people and, once on an airplane, of a woman who was like, I wish I knew about these resources 50 years ago when I was going through this.
Right.
And she started weeping and she said, it still hurts. And it's just a tragedy when you recognize that this is an issue and it's celebrated as women's choice, but there's so many who don't feel like they really are empowered with choices. They really don't know what's available. And so the way that we crafted this book was to create a middle ground of saying, okay, we can all agree that women's lives matter. So which side is really caring about a woman's life, about all of her circumstances, about helping raise her out of the cycles that she might be caught in so that she really can thrive and make her best choice and live her best life. And so that really excites me because I feel like, we can have a good conversation about how pro-life is pro-women here's a ton of stories that just scratch the surface of what pregnancy centers and pro-life organizations are doing all across the country all the time.
Exactly. I love that. So let's dig a little bit deeper. Let's talk about some of the different kinds of pressures that women experience when there is an unplanned pregnancy. Brittany, would you mind starting that conversation?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest ones we found was financial and economic pressures. The number one reason that women choose abortion is because of finances. And so I think that is something that is tragic, but also I think it's hopeful because that means there's a tangible way that we can get involved, right? If it's finances, if it's housing, that is just an easy way that we can start helping women with resources that are easy to, we can give money to pregnancy centers, we can help them find housing, and all of those are a result of economics, and I think we feature Human Coalition is an incredible network of pregnancy centers that they have something called the continuum of care. And because they really hone in on the fact that economics is one of the biggest pressures for women where they feel like they can't raise their child. They don't have the funding to do that. Maybe they don't have a partner that's with them that's helping them out on that. And so they actually, at their pregnancy centers, they pair women with a social worker who walks with them throughout their entire pregnancy and even after. And they identify key, issues in her life, whether it's she needs to find a job, she needs to find housing, whatever it might be, it's tailored to her specific needs. And I think that's such an amazing approach. And that's a way that we can start kind of tackling some of the economic pressures that women face.
Excellent. I was unaware. So what was so eye-opening for me when reading this book was that there are those kind of options that, one of the arguments on the pro-choice side is that, do you want to bring people into this world that can't be taken care of? And that was just incredible to learn.
Yeah.
Natasha, tell us a little bit more about other pressures that may occur for a woman with an unplanned pregnancy.
Yeah, I think it's sad that, out of this thing, we found that 79% of women were never informed of the resources available if they chose life. Mm-hmm. And so just a lack of education is a really big deal in this story. People just don't know that there are these resources. And then another huge pressure is the relational side of things. Those who feel like, their boyfriends or their parents or their friends are saying, you can't do this, or I don't want this child, or you can't handle this right now. And sometimes it's even just the silence, those, because culture has told men not to speak up. And so, that is also an issue as well. So relationships are a big, big source of pressure for women. And then an additional one is, health concerns. And we kind of break that down uniquely, I think, in talking about some of the mental health aspects, or how the culture really never talks about healthy relationships and what boundaries look like.
Right.
You won't see any good examples on TV. And if that's the only place where people are being informed of what relationships should be like, it's going to just continue the problem versus, we invite the church to start talking about this and start engaging in these conversations so that we can be part of showcasing this beautiful story of, how God has created humanity. And so we break the book down into this economics, relational pressures, and then health concerns.
Excellent. So you mentioned the church. That's a great segue. My next question for you, Natasha, we'll start with you. How practically can we advise the church on how to start talking about this? I remember seeing a statistic, and Brittany can confirm this or deny it. Somewhere around 3 in 10 women sitting in the church pew have had an abortion. Is that accurate, Brittany? Is that close?
Yeah, I believe that's it. I'm terrible at math, but we have 1 in 3 as our stat at least had an abortion, or their first abortion while they were attending a church.
Okay. Yes, I remember reading that. So Natasha, let's talk a little bit about, first of all, how can the church start having these conversations?
Yeah, I think what we need to do first is educate ourselves as the church to understand what these issues are. And that was a big reason why we wrote this book, to create empathy and understanding of how complex these decisions are for the lives of people in your congregation, the people you sit next to. Like, there's a lot of difficulties that we all experience, and the church can engage in those in meaningful ways. And I like to frame this whole conversation in light of Luke 15, where Jesus tells 3 stories of the lost, and he's willing to go out to the one and go out for the one lost coin, the one lost sheep, and he's there welcoming the lost son home. And I think that needs to be our heart. And so throughout the book, we have at the end of every chapter this little snippet of scripture and a prayer to just start praying and asking God to shape our hearts, to see people as he sees them, to love as he loves, to have his compassion, to look at the people, around us and ourselves, and realize like how God has compassion for our stories and for our brokenness, and is inviting us home. So there is so much that the church can do, first of all, to connect with the local pregnancy center, because the church doesn't have to be the experts in all these different things, but your local pregnancy center knows all these resources and could connect you to experts. So that's, I think, our first call to action, is just trying to connect the church to the pregnancy center and say, okay, let's start focusing on that relationship so we can serve your community even better.
I love that. So I encourage those of you listening, if God is, tapping you on the shoulder, that maybe you can reach out to your local pregnancy resource center and start connecting your church to that center. I know at the church that I go to here in the Nashville area, we have missional partners that we support. And what a perfect missional partner for the church, these pregnancy resource centers. Excellent. One of the questions, or one of the comments that came in is that she said we need these in Africa. And so my question, does Save the Storks work on an international level? Do you have any advice or direction? Brittany, I'll toss this question to you on what someone can do who is outside of the US and who they can connect with.
Yeah, that's a good question. So currently Save the Storks just works within the US, and we partner with pregnancy centers all across the United States. But I think those are great models that could be replicated in other countries. So I would say study those models and see what's working, what kind of supplies and programs they have in place. And that could be something that, could be replicated there. And then, I'll have to research. I'm sure there's other, big name organizations that are also working abroad. So that's a great question.
It's such a good
Heart,
question.
if I can add, Heartbeat International, that's one of the organizations we feature a lot, and they are an international pregnancy center support system, and I believe that they are in over 60 countries currently, so they could also assist in your local country perhaps.
Excellent. One of the things that I think people really need to be educated on, and it's reading your book and just kind of other friends who I know who have had abortions, people don't understand the long-term effects of that. And the first part of my question is, explain, Natasha, what are the long-term effects, not only for women, but also the men involved who may have wanted to keep that baby? So do you mind talking about that a little bit?
Yeah, I think a big part of the story is just the shame of, culture has said that, an unborn child is nothing. And so when there's regret, what do you do with that? Because culture says that that's nothing. And so those feelings aren't validated. Whereas pregnancy centers and churches, we at our core believe every life has value. And so I think, have the amazing opportunity to showcase how God's grace, God's forgiveness, God's life meets us there and validates that life and validates those feelings as well of the loss and the grief of that. However, also through Christ, there's forgiveness and there's wholeness and there's redemption. And that's one thing we try to encourage in our book is, yes, those feelings are valid and the men have them too. And no matter where you are in that process as women, there are those feelings, and we want to be a place, as a church, to invite people in to find that healing. And so we offer some great, next steps for churches to start offering those kind of Bible studies and retreats for people in your congregation, so that there is a place that if there are people in your congregation who feel that weight and feel that shame and don't know what to do with it, that they would feel safe enough to come and have those conversations so that the Lord can release that and also use that. And I think that's something we need to encourage is, these stories matter and those experiences matter. And we want to, ensure that all those who've experienced that in their past can, know that you're loved and cared for and valued. And so is that unborn. And that doesn't mar your image of God. It doesn't mar or take away your value in that story.
Right.
I would also mention one other resource that we talk about in the book is the American Association of Christian Counselors. And they actually have a tool on their website where you can find counselors in your area if it's not something you're necessarily ready to share with, a large group of people, or it's something you've never talked about. They have individual counselors who can meet with you and kind of process through that experience as well.
That's excellent. And I do feel, and I'd love your thoughts on this, Natasha, I do feel as a church, especially those of you listening, again, if you're feeling a tug on your heart that you want to get involved, inviting a pregnancy resource center to set up a table in the lobby one Sunday, because a lot of women aren't going to open up about this, right? And until the church really makes it safe to talk about it and to have someone there that maybe they can approach, and I'm talking about women who may have an unplanned pregnancy or women who have experienced abortion in the past. We want to open those doors for sure, and just maybe inviting a pregnancy resource center to set up a table and have resources would be a great first step. Natasha, thoughts on that?
Yes, totally agree. That's exactly what we're kind of calling the church to do throughout the book is have that engagement with your local pregnancy center, put out information, put it up in your restrooms, where people won't feel any sort of shame in even grabbing something or taking a photo, so they have that information, because that's huge. And I also would add to have something, try to figure out how you can build something for men. And many pregnancy centers do have something already. And often they're just looking for mentors, looking for people who will come alongside those who are in unplanned pregnancy, or men who've never had fathers, to have someone just speak into their lives in that way. And that's an amazing place where your congregation can be involved and start receiving the joy of discipleship and caring for those around us.
Excellent. Another question came in. Brittany, I'll toss this to you. How do we help men to take responsibility when it comes to unplanned pregnancies, so that women are not carrying this all alone?
Yeah, that's a great question.
That's a great question.
Before I answer that, one other resource I wanted to mention was actually Save the Storks has a 30-day devotional for churches that they can access on our website. And that actually helps small groups and Bible studies to start kind of framing their thinking and thinking about the Imago Dei, thinking about how we are created in God's image, and just start taking on more of a pro-life sort of, ethos. And then that it helps individuals to kind of decide, or as a church to decide, where do they want to get plugged in, or what is their initiative going to be, or how can they help their local pregnancy center. So I wanted to do a shameless plug there. But also just to answer that other question, I think that's a huge question. I think that's something that, we have to be holding men accountable. We have to be asking men to be involved in this, because, it's not just one person involved in an unplanned pregnancy, obviously. And so again, like I said, I was going to be a broken record by the end of this, but I really do believe getting involved with your local pregnancy center. And Natasha mentioned, a good majority of them have men's ministries, because a lot of times, she did a really amazing documentary about a men's ministry program in Alaska. And a lot of the men that got involved in that were like, you know what, I didn't know how to be a dad because I never had that modeled to me. And so there was a lot of fear in thinking about, how do I even approach this? And so they had all kinds of classes to help equip them, to help them learn what it means to be a parent. There's parenting classes for both parents who want to be involved, not just for the men. But I think, again, the pregnancy center is just such an amazing resource in equipping men to kind of take that next step to be a father and to be involved in their child's life and to be a supportive partner.
Absolutely. So I have another question, and I just wanted to touch on women who have had abortions or unabortion in the past, and the regret that is involved. And Natasha, would you speak to that a little bit further, and the forgiveness that Jesus offers, and just how you guys really serve those women as well?
Yeah. And honestly, that's where pregnancy centers will have after abortion care for those women. Last year, I was able to interview 3 different women who had that story. And it was so sad and interesting to hear them say that because they had gone there, they felt like they needed to keep on punishing themselves. So they kept on going back into this cycle. And one woman had a lot of abortions afterwards, because her worth and value was shattered because she had made that decision once. She felt, honestly, victimized by that decision. And since it was hers, she felt like she just needed to own all of that guilt. And that's such a tragedy that many people are facing that. And that's why the gospel just shines so brightly in the space, because all of us are broken. All of us need God's redemption and him to meet us where we are. And he does. And so we just want, anyone who's listening or anyone who reads the book to just hear, you're not alone. Your story is not the only one that exists, and there's trauma that influenced that. And there's, and we've all experienced some kind of traumatic experience because we live in a broken world. And so again, that isolation is such a lie. And the reality is God is there to meet us and to redeem us and to restore all the broken things. And so that's where, we just really honor the pregnancy centers who are offering this after abortion classes and resources, and really trying to create this safety, net around these women and men, to know that you are not bound by a past choice. You do not have to be a victim there. That's a lie that keeps you stuck there versus
That's
Christ.
right. That is the
There and
enemy.
raises us up.
Yes, absolutely. And I just encourage those of you who are experiencing that to put that at the foot of the cross. That is why Jesus came, to take that burden away. And I also encourage you to visit your local pregnancy resource center. And I've always believed, and Brittany, I'd love for you to speak to this. I've always believed that if you just step out and maybe start serving, maybe volunteering at a pregnancy resource center, that also helps to lift the burden as you give back and you become the hands and feet of Jesus. Brittany, would you speak to that a little?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as we've gone around this past week and met with different pregnancy centers, every single one of them said, we wouldn't be here without our volunteers and without the churches that are pouring into us, whether it's financial support or just, hands and feet on the ground there at the center. So that's 100% true. I mean, they have needs for everything, whether it's just folding clothes in their baby boutique, whether it's hosting a diaper drive. I mean, there's very simple, easy ways to start volunteering and helping. And then, a lot of them also have help from, if you're a trained counselor, if that's in your background and you want to volunteer once or twice a week to counsel women, whether it's through their pregnancy or whether it's talking through a past abortion. I mean, all of those different skills, you might think, how is my background or how is my job going to fit into that? But they have a need for all kinds. I mean, even if you're an accountant background, we had a woman come in and say, what, I want to volunteer at the pregnancy center. I'm an accountant. I can help with, bookkeeping and things like that. So, I mean, you might be surprised what they might actually need that your skill set can fill.
I remember reading about even like mechanical skills and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I want to say this. God uses our stories, the messy part of our stories. We all have those stories. And volunteering and really giving back really helps shape your story, and it uses what you've experienced to help others. So I so encourage that. And I know just based on the question that was asked and by this person, that person is hurting. And I really believe that a pregnancy resource center, for so many reasons, would be a great resource for you. Another great question, is there help for women to show them how to speak about this with their daughters? So gosh, getting to women and boys and girls at an early age, Natasha, that's super important.
It is. And we have a chapter that Brittany actually did most of the writing on, about how we can start engaging in this conversation in a really healthy and holistic way. Depending on which stream you grew up in, we've got different ways of discussing it. And sometimes if it's a all or nothing approach and you don't do everything perfectly, you feel, well, I've already screwed up once. I might as well, go down this whole rabbit trail. Right. And so there's healthier ways of engaging in this conversation. I think for parents, just to have that open dialogue and to consistently have that conversation, because culture is teaching them whether or not you like it. Like, right. They're getting a lot of messages from culture. And if you can be someone who's safe to have these conversations with in a way that's not shaming or degrading for them, I mean, that's going to be an amazing, amazing way to start. And we featured some friends locally who teach in local schools, and they help, high school students understand this conversation and what it means to have healthy relationships and boundaries and, all of those things. And so it's vital, to have that conversation. I think that's also where the church needs to have those conversations too, both for young people, but also for older single people. Like we need to be reminded that this is something that, that matters.
That was such wise advice. We need to be a bridge, not a door. We need to be a safe space for young people, especially, to be able to talk about it with us without shutting them down with harsh judgment or shaming. So that was just brilliant. We are coming to the close of our time together. I could talk to you both for another hour. This is such an important issue. I would just like to give you each a chance. Brittany, I'll start with you to just make some closing remarks. I really am grateful for those of you who have joined us. And Brittany, what would you like to say? What would be the last thing you want them to take away?
Oh man, the pressure. No, I mean, I just think that my hope for this book and the people that read it is just that they can come away with a really practical pro-life approach. I mean, I think a lot of churches and even a lot of Christians are afraid sometimes to approach this issue because it has been so politicized. It gets angry really quickly. I mean, we see all the dialogue on social media and on the news. And so I think people just kind of feel like, I don't even know where to start. And so my hope is that, you can find something in this chapter that might, or in each chapter, that might inspire you, to give you just a tangible, easy way to kind of start creating a way that you can be part of the pro-life movement. And one thing I wanted to add that I don't know if we mentioned, but Natasha wrote all the prayers at the end of each chapter. And I think that they're so beautiful because they're such an easy way to get started in praying for the pro-life movement, praying for your local pregnancy center, and not feeling like you have to take on the entire world. But if you can find one small way to volunteer or to get involved in your local community, that's a start. And I think that's a really great way to start practicing your pro-life ethic.
I love it. Natasha, how about you?
And Brittany basically said it all. No, I think that, one of my takeaways through, writing the book process is just how little things matter. Sometimes we think like, oh, this is so big and it's so hard and it's so dark, but little things matter. Like a text can make a difference. Taking someone out for coffee can make a difference. Being present will make a difference. And so just the simplicity of that, of being available for the Lord to use you, is huge. And I mean, my biggest hope for the book is that those who read it really would say those prayers and really would start allowing God to shape our hearts and minds to see this world as he sees them, to love as he loves, because he has such compassion. And one thing that I just found so interesting is, in Jesus's genealogy, he has 5 women who all experienced trauma, who all experienced hard things, who had unexpected pregnancies, who had rape in their background, who had all these different things. And Jesus didn't think that was too much to actually like graft into his own person. And so no matter who you are, no matter where you've come from, no matter the experiences that your life may still take you, like Jesus isn't afraid of any of that, and we can be part of sharing that redemption, both, for ourselves, but to those around us. And I think that's so beautiful.
Oh, that is so beautiful. Well said, ladies. I loved your dedication. So I'm just going to read the first paragraph. And I just want to say to all of you listening today, thank you for joining us. It's just so heartwarming to know that you too believe in this movement. For those of you who are hurting from past regret, we love you. We are here for you. And we talked about the pregnancy resource centers. We want you to take advantage of that. Jesus is all about forgiveness and healing, and we just pray that for you. And the first part of your dedication says, to all women and men who face the unplanned, who experience struggle and fear, may you find hope, healing, and life. to those who heroically choose life, and to those who bravely seek healing from past choices. I think that's so beautiful. Just encourage everyone to pick up this book, give it to others. Make sure you're telling people in your church community about this message. It's really an approachable, unique offering to the conversation. And the storytelling is amazing. Now, how can these women keep in touch with you? I know we have a landing page for the book called unplannedgracebook.com, and then Save the Storks is savethestorks.com. And I just can't thank you both enough. It's been really fun after reading the book, getting to meet you. And the book is available everywhere where books are sold. So please get out there and get this message to the world. And God bless you both.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having us.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Yeah, thank you all for coming and listening.
Yeah, thank you.